Hi, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of our Reflections GH show. Welcome once again. Thank you for joining us. If you're with us, we are excited today for several reasons. Of course, the reasons are also tied to the moment, the occasion, which is the commemoration of Ghana's independence, right? So yesterday, March 6, 2021, was the 64th anniversary of Ghana's independence from British colonial rule, which happened in 1957. And so obviously, like every year, last year, obviously this year, there was a muted celebration. But what we know has been the case every year is the parade that we celebrate, that we use to commemorate this event every year, which is the core of the conversation that we're going to have today. But before we begin, let me take a moment here to appreciate and introduce our guests. So as we advertise on our social media shows and pages and so on, our guests, we are so excited to have our guests because our guests have authored a piece, they have thought about this, they have been involved both in obviously their personal lives as Ghanaians, but also in their professional lives, to be involved in these conversations about Ghana's independence, the parade, the things that we should do culturally, socially to advance the cause of Ghana, right? So we are so excited to have this conversation. And I need to preface this with the fact that we learned a few hours ago that there's some doomsday situation happening in parts of Ghana, which are interrupting with our show a little bit. So although we are excited to have Ato and Eche, who I will introduce in a minute, we also need to acknowledge the fact that in case they go off or anything like that happens, it's not their fault, right? It's based on what is happening right now in parts of Ghana. So without much ado, I want to introduce our privileged. We are privileged to introduce our guests today, to Alzin Apia and Eche Sekanku, who are both in Accra and who we are excited to have with us. So they have a lot of, these are really accomplished people, but I will, for the purpose of this show, I will introduce them as Dr. Sekanku as a political communications professor, right? And that wasn't as the founder of Ghana Think Foundation, although, like I said, there's a lot of different things that we could call them because they have a distinguished career so far. So welcome, Ato and Eche. Welcome. If it's okay to call you that by your first names, but welcome.
Yeah, perfectly. Yeah, thank you very much.
Fine. And
I actually prefer you call me Eche. Yeah.
Great. Sorry.
Yeah, so Ato here. I'm sitting in my car and the lights went off where I was, but they just came back.
It's fine. Yeah,
they just came back. So
yeah,
I'll try and work on seeing me better later. But yeah,
no problem.
But I hope you can hear me loud and clear, though.
Yes. The audio is perfect.
Okay, great.
Yes, and we know that we heard about this, so we know it's not your fault, and we know it's not because you are not prepared. It's just because of the circumstances, and we do appreciate you for, despite the circumstances, making the time and getting through moving locations, because we've heard that both of you have had to kind of move locations to try to make this work. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate your presence. But I want us to begin the conversation, and I have my guest host, sorry, my co-host. He's not a guest, he's a part of the show. Godfrey here. So Godfrey, if you want to say anything before we get into the conversation.
Nothing really. I'm just really excited to have a session with, two powerfully intelligent gentlemen here. So I'm looking forward, and we should, take it away.
Great. So I want us to get into the conversation. I want to start from the piece that you both wrote. So for our viewers, this is a piece, and we did share it on our social media pages. So we will share it again. But this is a piece that I personally first saw this from the 2019 version that I believe was posted on Ghana Web. But this is a piece co-authored by our guest today, where they offer suggestions. First of all, they make a very bold claim, right? Well, bold suggestion of canceling the parades. And then they went ahead to offer suggestions for then what do we do, right? And so that, I think, is part of the core conversation. So first of all, I want to begin with, although it's an event, this Independence Day parade, particularly the national one and the regional ones, to some extent the district ones, right? They hold a very special place in most of our hearts, right? I grew up wanting to watch this on the morning of 6 March, right? And watch it on TV and all of that. So why, in your view, should Independence Day be discontinued or be done away with?
I'll let Atu go first.
Okay. Yeah. So I think for me, I think some of the things that we've been hearing about the parades first was we're hearing cases of school children at the parades fainting because they are standing in the sun for so long, and they have to march and things like that. And I think the parade for me is quite westernized, right? So just earlier this year, I was having some conversations with my mom and my aunt, who are both quite old and grew up during the whole independence movement and things like that. And one of the things that we kind of discussed was the idea of a Durbar, right? So the parade for me feels very westernized, centric, and I think especially at this point you could even say that we are woke. People use the term woke a lot. So we are woke to the extent that we probably should be doing something that is more traditional, something that is more Afrocentric. And if we are going to do something like a parade, it should be something like a Durbar, in my opinion. But I think, and I think we'll get into this, I think there are better ways to celebrate Ghana and to celebrate who we are than having like a big event like a parade. But if there should be something like a parade, I would go for something like a Durbar.
Thank you. Eche, was there something you wanted to add to that, or?
Yeah, no, just I'll just add my voice to what Atu said and say that I hold the same opinion. As you can see, Atu is very Afrocentric and Ghanaian centered. We both made decisions to come back home. That's not to say those who are there are not Afrocentric, but it's just one more of our own personal beliefs. And if we can tell from everything that Atu does, Ghana thing and everything, that is really Ghana oriented and Afrocentric. So now let's get to the subject matter. Just to add to what he said, here's the point. We are not even saying that they should cancel Independence Day celebrations. And I think that's what some people tend to get wrong. We're saying that let's celebrate Independence Day. It's important because otherwise then we'll be accused of neglecting our history. So I think that if we said as cancel Independence Day, I think that would just be way too extreme, and that's not what we're saying. What we're saying though is that can we find other ways of celebrating it? And we might not have the best ideas, but we're saying that given some of the reasons that are to us as enumerated, the logistical challenges, the huge encumbrances that students have to face, some fainting, some having, I mean, you remember JHS, SHS, you got to go for practice. We spend enormous amount of time, academic time doing this stuff. I mean, that whole week, things come to a halt. People have to go through so many logistical stuff to be at the parades. I mean, just that very nature of it. And it takes such a huge physical toll. You know, it's not just the kids, it's people from some of the security sectors having to collapse and faint. And some of these things stay with them for long. You never know what the effects are. So it's just the very nature of it. I mean, I've not even gotten to the other parts, but just even the very physical, logistical nature of it is so enormous, and it's so burdensome. Yes, onerous, so burdensome on people. But the very even more important thing is this: is so that's one, the physical and the onus, okay, the burden it puts on people. Then, as you mentioned, the more ideological part, which is very important. The thing is that there is an idea of independence. So how are we constructing independence? How are we understanding independence beyond the celebratory nature of it? It's great to go out there and march. I mean, you admit that it's kind of nostalgic. It's nice. I mean, who doesn't like seeing acrobatic displays or gymnastic displays or fireworks? Of course, we all like seeing it. You understand? Even in the US, they do fireworks on Independence Day. So we are cool with that. But what we're saying is that beyond the celebratory aspect of it, have we as a nation taken the time to actually come to a collective understanding of what independence means to us? What is the social, cultural, and political interpretation or constructions or understandings of what independence is? And how does that impact us as on the individual level and on the national level? It is then and only then that we can begin to have a more substantive interpretation or discussion of what the independence is and what it means to us. Because for all you know, for some people, it means it's beach day. Hey, let's go to let's go to wherever and go. I mean, if you ask people what they miss about independence, well, we've missed the evening parties, we've missed the beach parties and all of that. That is okay. That is okay. But we're just saying that independence must mean more than that. And it's about time we begin to look at the social and the political constructions and meanings, to explore the cultural meanings behind independence and what it means to us. So that is what then leads us to the fact that it is Eurocentric. Anyway, let me pause for now. I don't know if you have questions, but I can go on.
I mean, so just to clarify, right, for my own sake and maybe for some of our viewers, that you are not saying we should, so both you and Ato are not saying we should cancel Independence Day. You are saying we should cancel the parades. Of course, keep Independence Day, keep acknowledging it, but that, as we will talk about, that you have suggestions for other things we could be doing. So just to clarify, right, that's not what you're saying is like, forget about it and let's move on. You're saying, well, Independence Day should be commemorated, but the way that we are commemorating it is what we are suggesting we could change, right?
Yes, absolutely correct. So now that we've established that, the next thing too that we're saying is that yes, let's celebrate Independence Day, but what we're saying is that it's got to be more than the parades. It's got to be more than students marching past figureheads or political bureaucrats and taking the salute. It's got to mean more than that. It's got to mean more than people rehearsing and standing in the sun, in the scorching sun. And then a whole president is standing under the days, and then he takes a salute, and then everybody goes home. It's got to be more than that. So what we are saying is that the idea of independence ties into the notion of national identity. Our independence is circumscribed around our national identity. Otherwise, we do not even have an identity at all if we're not independent. So we are independent because we have asserted our national identity. And so the celebration of Ghana's independence should be linked to conversations about who we are as a people, what our national identity is, and what that independence means to us. The point that we're making is that, and the one of the points you're making to support that is that, apart from the physical whatever of the parade in and of itself is a Western Eurocentric idea. The whole idea of marching past, the whole idea, it has symbols or relics of colonialism. Okay, this is what the colonial guys used to do. I mean, we had governors, and the governors were kind of military in nature, political. And so it is a relic from the colonial era. You know, we had the veterans go march in World War, the war veterans, you know, the 28th February shooting incidents and all those Bema, oh Yanko, you know, all those songs, those, I mean, colonial stuff that we do. It's enough. It's enough of that. You know, we got to do something different. And so what we're saying is that we need to move from the Eurocentric Western concept of celebrating independence to a more Ghanaian Afrocentric concept, which is what Ato was saying. We are saying that the very nature of independence in and of itself, I mean, smacks of some hegemonic ideas. So for instance, our view of independence is mediated by Western and Eurocentric narratives. We do the marching, the march stuff, take the salute, and we do all of that stuff. You look at the parades themselves. Yes, they got some Ghanaian elements to it, but we're saying that it's got to be more than that. So, hegemony is what? The dominance of one power or institution or agency over another, with the acquiescence of those who are being dominated. And this is what Nkrumah was talking about. Neo-colonialism. We are independent, but our constructions or our view or world views or construction of identity still has elements of Western ideological concepts and European systems. Is mediated by that. And so what we're saying is that it is about time that we move away from this post-colonial hegemonic interpretations or meanings or constructions of independence to a more Afrocentric nature of it. And I think that is all that we're saying. Okay, so I'll pause here for Ato to talk, and then we'll go.
Ato, if you have other things to add to that.
No, yeah. I mean, I think on the parades, I think, you know, we've said what needs to be said around that. So I know if you could get into some of the alternatives that we suggested. Yeah.
Great. So one more thing. So we'll spend the bunch of the time that we have left on the alternatives and looking at alternatives. One more question I had, and this was kind of, I was thinking through as Eche was talking, right? So I've heard some commentary about, and this was, I was watching a restream of, well, it was a YouTube video about, there was a GTV coverage, right, of the 60th Ghana 60 celebrations, right? And the panel that was discussing, one of them talked about how, and this was about the parade specifically, and one of them talked about how the parade is important because, and this is to the point that this is a westernized idea, which I do agree with, but one of them talked about the parade as being important symbolically in Ghana because it is important to perform nation, right? Symbolically, it shows the performance of nation. And so that is one way that as Ghanaians or as Ghana, we rally around the performance of nation. So we need to keep it up, right? We need to, keep it there. And I had my own reservations about it, but just before we move on, what do you, so Atu or Eche or both of you, what do you think about this idea that we need to keep it because it is one thing that helps us to kind of rallies us together, or that's how we perform nationhood or nation as a people. What do you make of that suggestion or that point?
Okay, so
Yeah,
quickly,
definitely.
I think.
Go ahead.
Okay, Eche, let me just go first. So I think so far as okay, so there's a point to it, like people rallying around it, right? But I think what we are really talking about is what happens at the parade, right? What happens at the parade? We talked about that, how it's westernized. We talked about even how long the parade is. And then how do we also participate in the parade itself or the event? It's become something like a TV show that we are watching. We listen to the speech. Hopefully you would hear a very good speech. There'll be 2 or 3 sentences that will stay with us for a year or 2, which we can kind of like, work around. But I think I'm not sure that is how we should rally around. Because first, if it's more of a show that we are watching, we are not really participating. Like, we are watching it and passing commentary. Okay? This is an Independence Day where we are supposed to celebrate what the great things that has happened to Ghana or that have happened for Ghana, or reflect on the things that we can improve. And if we're going to watch the parade and be picking out what is being said for grammar and what is being said for a phrase to, repeat, and watch it as a show, how are we rallying around that? It's like watching the election petition show. It's like watching Date Rush. It's like watching the Black Stars play. How are we celebrating, or how are we reflecting on that day? Right? So that's what I have to say around that. I mean, definitely there's a point of it brings us together. When you talk to people, they talk about the social aspect of it, right? At the event. There is a social aspect to it, but I think even within that social aspect, we can do more, and that's in some of the alternatives that we mentioned. Yeah.
Thank you. Eche, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, no, just a bit, because I think that's what I've said it. So just a little bit, and that is really true. The idea that this becomes just a show or a performance. Well, if it's a performance, how are we part of that performance, or how are we part of that show? It's supposed to be participatory, and people need to be involved in it beyond just watching it on television and then going to the bar in the evening. If we're supposed to perform nation, then that performance or construction of nation or nationhood should be rewritten and taken away from the non-participatory Western and the very distant participation that we see now, which is what the point Atu is saying. So, given the degree to which independence speaks to the idea of nationhood and national identity, our point is that we need to rewrite or reconstruct that performance of nationhood to foreground Afrocentricity, to foreground the Ghanaian identity, to foreground the Ghanaian dream, to foreground the Ghanaian culture, and background all the more symbolic and celebratory aspects, which is important, but we want that day to also be a day of reflection, to use the word reflection. We want that day to also be a day of reflection in which we reflect on who we are as a people. We've gained independence. So we are independent now. We have our independent identity. What is that independent identity built on? What are the values that circumscribe that new Ghanaian identity? What is the hope, the vision, and the dream on which this new identity is based on? And more importantly, are these values and hopes and beliefs and ideologies, are they being are the citizens kind of imbibing them? To what extent is it part of people's mindset or part of people's own national views of them, people's own construction of the self? What I'm saying is that to what extent are those values a part of our own culture, or a part of who we are? If you talk to any American, they know what the American dream is: the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, and all of that stuff, egalitarianism, exceptionalism, and all of that. Well, what is the Ghanaian dream? If there is Independence Day, how is the performance of that nationhood a reflection of who we are? So some of the alternatives, I believe, or we believe, can contribute to that performance of nationhood, because if you sit at home on Independence Day and then you watch the parade, how is that nationhood? And then that is it. You watch the parade after that, end of story. I mean, it's nice. It's kind of something that stokes your emotions and all of that. But at the end of the day, what can we really do on such a day, to bring about nationhood that they're talking about? So that really is what we are saying, that it has to speak to certain deep cultural, and I mean, it has to be rooted in certain cultural and ideological beliefs which assert the idea of Ghanaianness. After all over Africa, independence is celebrated the same way. Nigeria, Kenya, whatever, Independence Day, there is, that's if I'm right, there's all these official events, there's a speech, and everybody goes about their own business.
Yeah.
Recently, recently, I saw on a page in Zambia, they were celebrating Ghana because they said Ghanaian schools have decided to ditch the Western uniforms and have now decided to go with the traditional attire. I think they do that on Friday, or there's a day in the week which the school kids do that. And they were celebrating Ghana and saying that this is what the whole Africa must be doing. So the point is, we should have Atu, you wanted to say something.
No, just quick things on what you've just said. The Magufuli in Tanzania decided to cancel the Independence Day celebrations, but he's a different guy, so I think we can have a different discussion. But the interesting thing about the uniforms is, I think for a few years different schools have had African print uniforms that they wear on special occasions, and I feel like the story that came out this year is part of the whole. I don't want to say this is not misinformation. It's more like people are picking some information to say something that is not really the case. We don't have African print uniforms that have replaced the uniforms that we have. We just, as part of the whole Friday wear, national wear things that I think Kufuor started during this time, which we really celebrate him for, people have, schools have started to kind of like create those kind of uniforms. So for me, it is great. But it's also, we have to say the truth about it, right? We can't say that we have replaced uniforms at all. So, if someone in Zambia sees the story, they might see it one way, but people in Ghana would know the actual truth. So I just wanted to point that out, that, it's something that we also have to be careful about when we are discussing. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And I want to acknowledge our viewers. Thank you once again for joining us, and we are excited for your comments and questions. So if you have, of course, this is why we wanted to do a live event, because we wanted to also involve other folks as well. So if you have any comments or questions, particularly questions that our guests could answer, please keep them coming to us. All right, so I want us to then jump into talking about the alternatives. I have read the piece that you both wrote. I do agree. First of all, I very strongly agree personally that the parade should be canceled. Right? That's something I definitely do agree with, and I agree that we need alternatives. So let's get into that. What should we replace this parade with? Anyone?
So I'll let Ato start. Yeah, I'll let Ato start. Yeah, so Ato, you go for it.
Sorry, Eric, I missed the last 10 seconds of what you were saying, so I didn't get the question.
Oh, sorry. So what I was saying was I want us to then, based on that background we've provided, let's get into the alternatives that you talked about in your piece, right? So then this is the core of the question. What then should we replace the parade with?
Okay. So, I mean, there are a number of them. So let me pick one to talk about. And the first one I want to talk about is the Buy Made in Ghana. You know, for me, I think that's one of the most important things. So, for instance, when the Independence Day comes, right, it's normally a holiday. Okay, so I think it's normally a great opportunity for people to actually have the time to go out and intentionally buy made in Ghana. Okay.
I think we might have lost him.
Yeah, it looks like he's still on, but the connection is
right.
All right. So all right. So Eche, if you wanna jump in here, while it looks like Ato is having connection issues at the moment.
Sure. So I'll go ahead and do that. So in place of that, what we're saying was that, I mean, there are quite a number of different. Oh, I think Ato is back.
Yeah, we lost you for a moment there, Ato.
Okay, great. Yeah, sorry. The internet went off. So I was saying that during the holiday period, Eche alluded to people taking time to go to the beach, to travel, to go on different places. It's also time that we can use to intentionally buy made in Ghana, right? So that means that, you know, there could be pop-up shops, there could be exhibitions in different neighborhoods, in different communities, in different suburbs around the country, where people come to buy made in Ghana goods. Similarly, shops can be open where people intentionally come to buy made in Ghana goods. For me personally, I've started going to shops and I intentionally ask them, what do you have that you sell here that is made in Ghana? I intentionally ask people, right? So if this is something that becomes conscious for our retailers and our wholesalers and all our shop folks to do,
All right, it looks like it's buffering again. Sorry, Eche, would you want to jump in here again?
Sure. Yeah. So then, Ato was talking about made in Ghana. Okay. So I'll just take it from another perspective. And then when it comes, hopefully he can be able to continue with that. The conceptual foundation on which you are basing this. Okay, Ato is back.
Okay, sorry, just to finish my point. So what I was saying was that, you know, we need to do these things intentionally, right? So around this independence period, we rally around it. I mean, what are we independent for? What were our forefathers and foremothers thinking about? That we can do our own things, we can create our own things, So we need to be able to use this period to show how far we've come, right? So if I want to buy, people are always making fun of, we import toothpicks from abroad. This has always been a joke as I've been growing up, right? But recently, I know there are companies in Ghana that make toothpicks. So if we don't have a period where we are intentionally trying to buy made in Ghana, how will we be able to hear that now we make toothpicks in Ghana and this joke must end, right? My last point around this is also just the economic power of this, right? We need to be able to help our own companies grow and scale. So if we are not intentionally buying from them, working with them, even buying so that we can tell them that the product that you made has this problem so they can improve it, we are not going to get to the point where we will scale our production to be able to provide more, in our country, so that these companies can make more money, make more revenue, show more track record, to even get investment, to be able to grow their businesses and to be able to hire more people in Ghana, right? So for me, buying made in Ghana has so many untold possibilities and returns for us, and we have to take this very seriously.
Thank you.
We have to rally around that at this time. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And so I'll jump back to you, Eche, to continue the point you were making when Ato went off.
Right. Thank you very much, Ato, for those 2 points. So just to add to that, so I was just saying that the foundation, or the concept, or the foundation, or the idea on which we are basing our alternatives is that we are arguing that there needs to be a change in the way that we interpret and understand Independence Day. And that change should be rooted in cultural, African, and Ghanaian-centric values. So that this new rules that we are rewriting on our understanding or interpretation or construction of independence should be predicated on Ghanaian-centric ideas. And those, the first two is what Ato said. So that on Independence Day, I was so excited. And I'm not saying Magufuli is my hero or anything like that, but I'm just saying that I was so excited when he canceled Independence Day in his country. I'm like, that is my kind of person. And he said that he was going to use the day. I've forgotten whatever he did on that day, but it was so excellent. So in Ghana, we can do the same thing.
Yeah.
If we are saying that we need to use Independence Day to perform nation, we need to use, don't forget that the idea of Independence Day is linked to our national identity. Remember that. So if we are looking for alternatives, then those alternatives should be rooted in national culture and national identity. And what are those? One of them is what we said is the Durbar. Wouldn't it be beautiful to have an Independence Day when instead of people just marching like that and saluting, they rather perform, it's a celebration of national cultures. Yes, a dance or whatever from, we used to have National Festival of Arts and Culture, beautiful stuff from the 10 regions. Yes, so you have the kids, you have the security agencies, you have the traditional authorities, you have the queen mothers, you have the whatever organization, youth organizations and other things. They come and then they perform nation. They perform Ghanaian cultural, national values and identity. Like they perform that, not some gymnastics or dressing in white socks and white gloves and then saluting. Okay, so they come there and then they do that. They perform that national whatever culture, celebrate. So that's one that we say, a Durbar. Guess what? Somebody, a student, whoever, is going to be 10 times more educated about our culture on that day than any other time. And it's going to stick. And you know what? The Western guys will respect us better. We're going to be all over the place because we have rewritten, redefined, and reimagined and reperformed the concept of nationhood to mean something different. We're going to be on CNN everywhere because they're like, guess what? This is what Ghana did on Independence Day. And then we like put their stuff to the background. We put it to the background. Okay, and then we foreground. Remember, that's the definition of Afrocentricity, which scholars like Molife Asante and co talked about. What is Afrocentricity? It means foregrounding rather than backgrounding African values. What is Afrocentricity? It means celebrating our cultural identity and our cultural heritage. What is Afrocentricity? It means making sure that African identities and values are the framework for interpreting the world and understanding what the world is. Our concept of happiness and development should not be based on Western notions or ideas. It's got to be interpreted through a prism or through a lens of African values. That's all we're saying. So if we have the Deba is going to perform that, and it's going to be a huge tourist attraction. On Independence Day in Ghana, everybody want to come, especially the people in the diaspora, because it's like a national celebration of our culture and our identity, and it's like so different. It's so woke. You understand? It's Afrocentric woke. Yeah. Okay, so that's one. Then the other thing is that we can even make it a national day of volunteerism. I know Ato has that in Ghana, and I always salute him for that. But I think we need to make it more part of our culture. I was so impressed when on Martin Luther King Day in the U.S., I saw the president of the United States painting a building. I was like, whoa. Now, when I saw that the first time, I was like, okay. So on Independence Day, well, that was the first time, so I was quite impressed. So on Independence Day in Ghana, it's the same thing. We can imbibe the culture of service, of sacrifice into our people. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your nation. Instead of us thinking of Independence Day, there are some people coming to perform, and we sitting in the house and watching them and enjoying the performance and feeling all good about ourselves. Oh yeah, we have a good military. Why don't we go out there and be part of that performance? Why don't we go out there on that day and go and do something for our nation on that day? Why don't we go out that day and do something that would essentialize the Ghanaian culture on that day? We can plant trees. Trust me, if we cancel the parade and we use it as a tree planting exercise, listen, this country is going to be way better than that. I mean, we're going to move forward. Yes. Yeah. So we have to do something and involve the people and then decentralize it. And then in Nobua, you see, bring it the traditional, our community. What's the community? Yeah, the idea of community is so central to Africanness. So remember our cultural studies in Nobua. Let's come together. Let's come together. Well, I just had my version of doing so. There you go. Independence Day, we're not able to have enough energy for the nation. We've got to have our own domestic drilling of energy, the sources of energy, right? Yes, these are the things that we should be doing. Yes, so that we don't even depend on Western sources of energy. Yeah. So how can we mobilize the wind and other alternative ways of solar? God has blessed us with the sun. Other alternative ways, like that's all our argument. Instead of drinking Coke, Pepsi, and all of that, we should just stop serving the Sprite and stuff and Pepsi. We got to serve. There should be a national.
And then we should serve Sobolo and Asana and Lamujin. And I know my people from the northern parts of the country would love Poha. I mean, right. I think these days we've seen. You see, the funny thing is, there are people in our country who are forward-thinking, who are doing some of these things. But sadly, the people who need to help us scale these things that we talk about are not doing their job. If you go to weddings, I mean, these days, because of COVID, you know, weddings have been banned and things like that. You know, it's a bit, you know, in the air. But previously, if you went to weddings, so many weddings would serve, you know, palm wine, Sobolo, Asana, Lamujin, you know, natural drinks that are known in Ghana, right? Because it's a celebration of culture. The wedding is a celebration of culture. So similarly, just like you said, we need to. I mean, we like Coke, we like malt, we like those drinks, but we need to intentionally support what is local and what we can do, so we can also gain an upper hand in our own country. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Exactly. That's the whole point. So that the way they reimagined and reinterpreted and reconstructed Valentine's Day to be Chocolate Day, such that sale of chocolate goes exponentially high. Now, February 14th is no more flowers. You go buy flowers from China and from those places, give to your girlfriend. Now it's Ghanaian chocolate. And people are beginning to use chocolate as the symbol of love in Ghana, and not some flowers or some card printed from UK. So all we're saying is exactly that.
Yeah.
Yes, all we're saying is exactly that. And imagine a president who takes the lead in doing, like before the National Wear, he did Chocolate Day. Every day should be Ghana Wear Day. Why would you fault somebody coming to an interview because he's wearing traditional African stuff? You say it's not official. Those things need to be done away with. Imagine a president coming to say, forget about those wigs the lawyers wear, those UK wigs they wear. We're going to replace them with some African fabric or some African stuff. Okay, so that's all our argument. That is going to really move our nation, provide good market, for African stuff. Listen, we have been blessed with who we are, not by only natural resources, but the kind of people that we are. And we need to impact the world with our idea of communalism, our idea of I am my brother's keeper, I am my sister's keeper. We need to translate that into our governance and sell it to the world and let the world know that there is some value for community, for collectivism, looking out for the other. So it is not just the physical things, material things we're saying, even a redefinition, so one of our suggestions was a dialogue, a redefinition of what our national values are, and essentially making them a part of who, like every school kid should be able to recite the national creed. And it should be part of our language, and we should live it. And it should also influence our culture and our policies, political policies, national health insurance, whatever, free education, whatever, should be based on the idea of looking out for the other and being a better angel. So, and that's what I write in my book, the Afrocentric Obama, if I can just pull it up right here. Okay. I talk about Afrocentricity, you see, and how Africa, listen, we don't need Western stuff. We can rather show the world what it means to be African and what it means to be communal, and how that can help us to build societies and look out for the people in our nation, how Africanity and community can show the world that this is the new ideology of the world. So that is the argument that we're beginning to make. So let's look for different things. We made a couple of suggestions over there, the national dialogue or conversation, and it can happen on community levels. It can be the district, our communities come together, the idea of community. Let's meet at the community center on Independence Day to talk about who we are and what the next years is going to look like. Okay? And if there's a national development plan, we discuss that national development plan on that day. How far are we going on that common, the word is common national development, not some politician somewhere, but a people-centered national development. Let's meet on that day at the city square, at the community center. Listen, we understood democracy even before the Athenians. We knew what it meant to meet at the community center before the Greek city-states met at the city square. We did community, Africa. We did community before even democracy came. We understood that government should be about the people before democracy even came, because we were about communalism. So let's get all this into our national ethos and let it translate. Some president needs to be bold about it. Take that bold decision. It's not going to be popular, because we used to the parade for such a long time that people cannot even just imagine not having a parade. But guess what? This year, we had a virtual non-parade. It was muted, but it can be done.
Yeah.
But, I mean, voila, it can be done. Nobody died.
Yes.
That's one of the things that COVID, right? Maybe this is our opportunity, right? To COVID,
Yes.
for all the bad things that COVID has done, maybe this is the opportunity for us to reimagine this, right? That while we were able to do an almost non-event and nobody died, nothing happened, right? So why don't you continue like that? And I do appreciate that. You saw I was nodding the whole time. I do appreciate one of the things that I think about, as you both were speaking, was what happened to, and this is not even going to be part of our conversation because we don't have the time, but I was just wondering what happened to our sense of communalism, right? Even I'm not that old, but I remember growing up and I felt, even growing up, I felt that there was a bigger sense of community in my area, right? We would go out and we would, pick up the trash and all of that as a community, even with church and all of that. But we don't see that anymore. Anyway, that's not part of that conversation. Godfrey, I want to bring you.
No, Eric. Hold on, Eric. Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, because I really want to second that, because I think what Eric is saying is very important, and it's also very connected to what we're all talking about. Actually, you are definitely speaking my language in terms of, probably, turning that day into a day of service. And, of course, where I am right now, on particular days, even sometimes in some days in the week, it is a service day. So I think for me, removing the entire parade or taking away and replacing it with service where students actually do something for their own community, because I think that also feeds into what Eric is talking about, in a sense, sort of reintroducing our cultural notions of communal living, of helping your neighbor and not necessarily being scared of your neighbor. And I think somehow we're really kind of, imbibing and just uncritically borrowing a lot from the United States, especially with regards to, this, robust individualism, and, it's all about you and your property. So I think maybe we could, part of removing the parade and part of reintroducing a different way or different form of nationalism is to think about, what our local cultural epistemologists actually, what do they actually tell us about how to live differently, how to do things very differently. So I'm really appreciative of all the comments, because I think, in order to sever the colonial ties, it has to be as drastic as possible. In a way, for me, I think a very Fanonian, approach when it comes to severing the ties to colonialism, because we really have to, or else we're not going to go anywhere. So anyway, do you want me to talk about the last question, Eric?
Yeah, go ahead.
So to sort of wrap it up, I think part of the question, the last. And before question, you do that, sorry. Godfrey. Yes. Hello, Godfrey. Yes, okay, I'm here. Great. Fantastic point there. Yeah, so fantastic point there. So before you go on, I'm not going to let Eric go scot-free, because he said what he's saying. He talked about the old nature of empathy, people looking out for each other in community. And and he said maybe it's not part of it. Of course, it's part of this. And I really wanted to bring him back on that, because it's a very good point. It's a very, very good point. I'm going to quote from some part of the very last page of my book. I'm going to quote this. This is what somebody said, and this is an American. Okay, this is what Obama said. He said, "I say that but the value of empathy is very important to the idea of communalism, and that is what Eric was talking about. We look."
Did we lose him?
It looks like it froze.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it looks like he froze.
Hopefully he can.
Well, I guess so. I'm sure he'll come back. It looks he hasn't been cut off yet. It looks
I mean,
the reason I was saying that is that the reason I said that is because this is it's going to be a long. I guess I said that for logistical reasons. The fact that we don't have a lot of time. That's why I said that. But obviously, this is connected to the conversation, right?
Absolutely.
Because I keep wondering what happened to our sense as Ghanaians, right? What happened to that sense of communalism that that even some of us experience a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Atom.
I think it's definitely, Eric, I think it's urbanization, right? Urbanization is the most part of it, because a lot of this Nobwa, if you think about it, it was being led by chiefs and community leaders. So in the case where you have urbanization and people are living in, their own houses in neighborhoods where they don't even know their neighbors, to talk of know who leads the neighborhood, right? You lose that. So I think urbanization has definitely affected it. But I mean, I think I think it happened. I don't think it happened as much as it even needed to happen when it was happening, but urbanization has made it worse.
Right.
So for what Eche was alluding to, for Ghana, I think we created National Volunteer Day, which is every September 21st, where like people who are in urban areas, right, who've lost that Nobwa thing, come together and volunteer in their neighborhoods or elsewhere, right? So it's something that we can bring back. Godfred, just like you mentioned, it's a service day. Right. So you just kind of like rally around that day. You have a lot of different groups like Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, Rotary clubs. They do this all the time. Around that day, they do more. Other people come together to do things. Some of the things that we've been pushing a lot over the last few years is blood donation, right? Because blood donation is something that people mostly do voluntarily in Ghana. So as part of National Volunteer Day, we try to get more people to go and donate blood for the first time, so that in 3 months later, now that they understand that blood donation is not that difficult and nothing will happen to me, blah, 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 3 months time, they add to those who are already voluntarily donating blood. So I mean, just back to the point around what we are doing or what we want to see with Independence Day. You want to be able to push certain habits during that time, so that after Independence Day, people continue to do it. And then every Independence Day, you reinforce it, you remind people, you reinstate it in their minds that this is why we decided to do this. So keep on doing this all year round. Yeah.
Great.
Ato's response actually goes into the last question, which is, how can we get both the central government and local government to commit to these alternatives? And I think that's really important. The other thing I wanted to point out quickly also, Eric might know about this, but when you read all these cultural, how do you for instance, Hofstede's cultural differences. And then they talk about the American culture is very individualistic, whereas places in Africa and South America tends to be collectivist, right? But what is very interesting about that as well is that people tend to map those into development parameters. I was like, people in individualistic cultures are actually developed, so somehow individualism is a good trait. But they don't know what the cost of that, and I think that really also connects to what Ato is saying in terms of urbanization, because there's a sense of I have my privacy, I have my own space, I don't have to really worry about be bothered by anyone else. But I think part of that also connects to what we have been learning about culture, that somehow communalism is a bad thing, especially in the United States. I mean, you hear this a lot, and it's in our movies, it's everywhere, that somehow cultural constraints, is terrible for individual growth. And I think that really also that needs to be changed. That narrative needs to be changed one way or the other. I think Ato's point is connected.
A couple of quick things. So the funny thing about even this urbanization, and I'm in my own space and I'm in an estate, is that you still have more crime in those areas than the places where it's more communal, right? So even in sometimes fixing something like crime in such areas needs a communal approach.
Right.
You know, you need to have, you know, watchdogs or people who are watching for what is going on in the community to be able to spot and ensure that we are being safe, right? And then the second point is also something that we also mentioned in an article about celebrating other tribes or celebrating other cultures, right? So it's not to misconstrue as, you know, we are doing tribalism. No, far from that. I am a Fanti. I am from Elmina, right? So we have the Bakatwe Festival, which is in July, and we have Edina Bronya, which is in January. Okay, but the Evers have their festivals, the Dagombes have their festivals, you know, other parts of the country also have their festivals. When Independence Day comes, we are celebrating Ghana. We are not celebrating different tribes' festivals. So what is Ghana about us? What is Ghana about us is, I mean, I'm from the same country as the Evers and the Ashantis and the Dagombes and the Nzimes. So being able to celebrate other things about Dagombes or other things about Krobos makes me Ghanaian. So that's another thing that we're also suggesting, right? That we intentionally try to celebrate other tribes during this period. And some of it could also be looking at what are the similarities between or amongst these different tribes, right? You take Benku, which is a popular dish with the Akan people, and then you look at Akple, which is a popular dish with the Ewe people, and it is similar. So even this period can also even help us figure out what are the similarities in our food, what are the similarities in our dance, what are the similarities in our language. So that's another thing that we thought would also be great to help us celebrate Ghana in this period. Yeah.
Wonderful. And one of the things, so as we
Eric.
talk about this, so go ahead. Okay.
There's a question. There's a. Are you gonna ask the question? Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna go to the question in the. I think it was directed at HA, but I'm sure Ato can respond, or any of us can respond too. So the question is, I don't disagree with Dr. Sikanku. However, I did my high school education in the Eastern region, and trust me, the Independence Day celebration is iconic to many school kids in these areas. What is the alternative for those kids? So it goes back to that argument, right, of the nostalgia, and that's all we've known. But what do we do about that?
Yeah, Eric, sorry, the internet was a bit bad, so I missed some of what you were saying. I don't know if the question could be.
Oh.
I think now we're
all right.
Okay. Well, I mean, you know, I can probably talk about something.
Yeah, go ahead. And when they come back, yeah.
Right. So, you know, what is interesting about this is also that I think it also goes back to what we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
Because if this is what the students know, okay, you're back. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I'm back. And I can see the question. So the question is talking about the celebration is iconic to many school kids. Okay.
Right.
So, I mean, really, what's the alternative for the kids? What are the school kids doing at the parade? They are marching, right? That's what they are doing. Why that instead of marching, let them do something that is more Ghanaian? Like, let me say something that is very, you know, off left field. Make them come and dance Azonto. How about that? Right? Let them do something that is traditional, that is cultural, that's something that is Ghanaian. Like, for me, Azonto is I'm very passionate about Azonto. I mean, we had a dance and a music that for the first time, and a Ghanaian song was the top song in Australia. We've never seen that before, right? So why are we not taking Azonto more seriously? For instance, why do they need to come and march? Let them come and do something else that is more Ghanaian, right? I mean, I don't. Fine, I can see how it's iconic, but they can definitely do something else that they will enjoy. You know, they'll definitely do something else that they will enjoy. I mean, let them come and do role play from some Ghanaian social study story, right? Let them do role play of Akonfanochi bringing the golden stool down. Let them do role play of some story from our past. They don't need to match.
Good. I agree. And you know, like replicating, like, and these are kids. I do appreciate that point, because like I said, it goes back to that same conversation about once something becomes nostalgic, we stop questioning why we do it. We just do it because it feels good. It makes us feel good. It takes us to a good place, right? And that's the thing with nostalgia, is that you stop questioning why you do it, and you just do it because this is what we've known for 30 years or 40 years. In our case, 64 years, right? And so, but then if you realize, particularly because at this point, if you realize it's not, first of all, even for symbolic cultural reasons, this is not part of our culture, right? It's been part of the national consciousness for a while, but you know, military parade is not part of our culture. So I agree, right? With Ato, for instance, the kids will adopt, right? If we tell the kids to do other things that are more culturally important, like I was looking at earlier this week, I was watching this very short documentary about the work of James Barnor, for instance. Most of us, a lot of people in Ghana don't even know him. James Barnor, the photographer who basically has photographed every president since Kwame Nkrumah, and his work. There was an exhibition of his work, you know, things like that. How do we not celebrate people like him? He's still alive, but he might not be alive for much longer. How do we celebrate people like that? There's independent, for instance, I know that in Ghana they have independent art shows, contemporary Ghanaian art shows that go around. But how do we make those things mainstream, particularly in the context of Independence Day, right? These are all part of that cultural argument we are making. We need to shift away from that colonial mindset of let's go do a parade. Eventually, it's going to be a difficult shift. But once again, which government is going to risk political power to make this change? I think maybe that's we're over time, but that might be our last question.
But think about that. I mean, well, I don't know if any research has been done about this, but I don't know if a government is going to lose political power because they cancel the parade. I mean, really, right? And you know, and I think that's one even major issue that we have as a country, right? Where the hidden truth is governments come into power because they want to win elections and not because they want to serve the people or develop the country. And it's very sad that we are kind of getting to this point, or have gotten to this point, right? I mean, for me, like, I think it's almost underestimating Ghanaians to the extent that if we try to do something right, the majority of people will not vote for us. I mean, I think that's terrible to even have that kind of thought, right? That there are not enough Ghanaians who will support the right thing being done. I mean, if that's the point, then we should all close and go home. But I don't think that's the case, right? So, you know, I think, you know, definitely, I mean, COVID has shown us that, you know, we can do things different ways, right? I mean, one of the things that we also mentioned was celebrating Ghanaian success stories. And for me, for two reasons, we don't see this enough, right? If we celebrated Ghanaian success stories as much as we need to, rich people in Ghana would not hide, right? A lot of people who are very rich in Ghana, they hide. They don't want people to know that they have money. But if it was a point where we are celebrating people being successful, we are going to talk to people about how did you become successful, we want to work with you, we want to improve, we would get rid of that issue. And then the second part is we need to be able to inspire ourselves to get things done, right? Like, we need to be able to show ourselves that you can make it here in our country. You can make it here in your community. One thing that is very interesting is a lot of the times, like sometimes people don't want to do certain jobs in certain areas because they feel like a certain job is not a good job or it doesn't speak well of them, right? But if we can show how people are successful with different types of jobs, it would motivate more people to do the same thing. It's all part of our independence. If you're going to say we are 64 years and we can't point to how far we've come or how far people have come in their journeys to be able to inspire others, not even just the younger generation. Because for me, for where I sit, I don't like the idea of leaders of tomorrow or future leaders. No. They are young people who are doing great things now, whose stories need to be told, so that people who are their age begin to succeed now. Like, you're not going to wait till you are 40 or 50 before you really succeed. We can't wait for that. Ghana can't wait for that, right? So I think we really need to get to finding success stories around us. And it's not just, like national level. If you are based in Keta, you have to know success stories around you in Keta to inspire you to do better. So yeah, I just wanted to make that point.
Great. So Gottfried, did you want to add anything else before? It looks like we are a little over time here, but if there's anything else that Gottfried wants to add before we wrap it up.
Nope, not really. I really appreciate the conversation, and that's all I wanted to say. I really appreciate the conversation, especially around how do we move away from colonial relics and colonial performances. So I really appreciate Eche and Atul for coming on board. Apparently there is a comment. So Eric, do you want to read the comment as well as we wrap things up?
Okay. Let me. All right. So we have a comment, and the comment from Nana Kwame says,
okay.
Atul is speaking from an elitist perspective. The government can lose popularity without any good justification to cancel the parade. There's a populist undertone to the celebration. Atul, so this is thrown into your lap.
Okay. Yeah, so let me say something quick about this. I mean, I don't know if Nana Kwame thinks those who are not elitist are the ones who participate in the parade. And I'm also wondering, Nana Kwame, who watches the parade? Do you feel they're elitist or not elitist? I mean, so far as justification, that is a problem with the government, right? If the government of the day cannot justify why we have to cancel a parade and do other things and why that will benefit Ghanaians, then are they really for Ghana? Nana Kwame, think about it. Are they really for Ghana? And we need to think above populist things. We need to think above populist things, right? I mean, you can't tell me that if they cancel the parade and then another person came to say that we will keep the parade, that's why they will lose the election. If that's why they will lose the election, then what are we really doing in that country? Fine. I mean, you can call it an elitist perspective, but this is something good for Ghana. That's how I think. I don't think elitist. I don't think educated. I think what is the best thing for all of us. So for me, that's what I have to say.
Right. And I would like to also, push back on the elitists a little bit because sometimes it could be a way to sort of resist in a other way of thinking about how an event could occur or could be done differently. And yes, I think Nana is right to the point that there is a populist undertone to the celebration. And maybe that underlies the problem that, it's more of, going back to what we said earlier, there is the nostalgic part of it in which there is a sense that we belong to a nation. It's more of a symbolic a sense of belonging, and really does not translate into our material everyday what really affects us. But in that moment when we feel really excited, we feel like we really belong to our country, and then there's all these narratives of we've really gone far. We are now 64 years past independence, but actually that is not accurate. When we think about our interconnected economic systems, that still depends on the West to give us money. I mean, we're really not independent in some ways. So I think that maybe is the pushback, the fact that it has a populist undertone, and it's that populist undertone that we have to resist. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, then on the other hand, then it is elitist. Not really. I mean, that's how I would respond to that.
And to add to something Ato was saying earlier, right? There's this big problem. I believe it's a big problem of governance, right? So Ato alluded to it earlier on, where not just NPP or NDC, everybody does it, right? Of course, they've been the two parties in power for the last 20-something years. But this idea of governing to win elections rather than governing to develop the country has become a problem. Everybody keeps looking out for what is the best way to win re-election. When they come, how are we going to govern, right? Based on the popularity of ideas, how are we going to govern to make sure that we are winning the next election? And that is not a way to reimagine things. That is not a way to transform a country, right? And so this is my little comment over there too, is if we keep saying some idea, provided it's well tested and it's something that it's going to work, some idea is not popular enough to be tested or to be brought forward, we'll never move forward, right? And so Nana Kwame has another comment. He says, well, my comment comes off the back of Ato's earlier comment about downplaying the political implications of canceling the culture. Of course, so there's a value to that comment from Nana Kwame earlier on, specifically addressing Ato's comments early about the political implications. So we need to be practical. Being practical means, of course, if you are a party, so right now NPP is in power. If NPP wants to win an election, they might not, in the general scope of things, they might not necessarily want to do things that are unpopular with the people, right? And in a specific case, so like Ato mentioned, I haven't seen any surveys or any kind of research that backs the idea that this is so popular, people are so attached to Independence Day Parade that if you try to remove it, you will lose an election. This is just based on what we've heard. So this is all the evidence we have right now. It's anecdotal in terms of what we hear people talk about it in very glowing terms. So we think that people love it to the extent that they will, go to the extent of even voting the government out if they canceled it. But what if the government has, just like Ato and Eche have said throughout this conversation, what if the government has viable solutions, viable alternatives to the parade itself? Once again, we are not saying we are canceling Independence Day itself. Of course, the holiday is going to be there. Of course, people can still go to the beach and all of that. But to say that the parade itself as that militaristic performance of nation or whatever we want to call it has at best outlived its importance, right? So I was thinking things like, in my head, I was thinking before this show, I was thinking if you are, I remember when I was a young man, I'm still a young man, by the way, but when I was a much younger man, a teenager in my early 20s, there were things I would do, right, to assert my masculinity that now I don't do anymore because I'm confident enough of my masculinity. I don't need to do these things anymore. In the same way, if 10, 20 years after independence, Ghana was performing this parade as a performance of nation, we are 64 years old. We don't need that anymore. We need to move forward, right? There's other ways to assert ourselves in the committee of nations in the world without necessarily performing these parades. And as Ato and Eche have talked about throughout, that have all of these just barely symbolic things, right? But don't have actual practical value, particularly for for garnering community, a sense of community in Ghana, which we all admit we are fast losing. So I know we've gone over time, and let's see if there's any other. So Nana Kwame has another comment that says re-election is a motivation to governments globally, which is true, right? But once again, is that why we will want to, is that what we do? Is that all we dedicate? Is that all the government should dedicate their time to, right? Only to popular, what do you call it? Popular policy, right? Should government dedicate, whether it's NPP or NDC or whichever party, right? Should we say that, well, re-election is the goal here, so let's do only the things that are popular? If that's the case, then the nation will never be transformed.
You can try one more time, but if it doesn't, that's fine. Yeah, no. So I'm in. If Eric could allow me to respond to that.
Yeah, we are here. Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear me, Ato? Uh-oh. Atu, can you hear me? If you wanted to respond quickly before we wrap up here. Looks like it.
It makes sense. Maybe the point here is the kind of populace, right? Because if our Ghanaian citizens are going to allow government to be elected because the capitalist idea and not some to the benefit of all, there's a problem, right? And for me, we're in a big problem because I have seen our electors. But that's why we also have the Ghanaian dream, right? Need Ghanaians to be more independent. We need Ghanaians to want to need more and to ask for more. And if that is happening, it's not going to be about we re-elected you because of populist ideas, right? We re-elected you because you did what we needed to be done. Even if you think about populist ideas, fine. You could say free HH populist idea. For me, I'm not a big fan of free HH. How are you going to test a parade is something that is keeping the government in power? I just wrap my head around that. I'm sorry. Yeah. So let's do for our country. Let's do to be more independent. Let's do what we need to do to even be independent citizens, right? Own things that we run, businesses, organizations, etc., so that we can be proud to be from our country. And when 6th March comes, because people debate, when 6th March comes, we can say that we celebrate. And people want to be asked, are we celebrating for Ghana's birthday? And more of him to everyone.
Great, thank you so much. And so I mean, these are issues that obviously we will not be able to exhaust the conversation on, but we do appreciate all of the thoughts that we've expressed over here. We once again want to appreciate the presence of Ato and HA, who was not able to join us, and I believe it's not because he didn't want to. I believe it's because he couldn't, right? So
no, he was here, but he had to go, right?
Okay, so I appreciate that. He was here, but he had to go. So I appreciate our guests so much, and once again, thank you, and thank you our viewers for joining us once again. We will continue this conversation on our social media pages, so let's keep the engagement up on this topic throughout, in the coming days and weeks. We will definitely continue the conversation, and as we post things on social media. Once again, thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Right.